I keep adding these podcasts as I find new papers, and that can sometimes put things somewhat out of sequence. I suspect. So please make sure you keep up. But nonetheless, this paper talks about the context of using coastal evidences of shellfish remains in archaeological sites, colors derived from some of the coastal species of phytoplankton and zooplankton and so on, and concluding that a lot of the innovation for the sapiens around 100,000 years ago happened along the coasts. But there is this group at Griffith University in Australia, I think, which keeps looking at evidences from the interior, especially around the Kalahari Basin, and some nice papers have been written about how there were, around the same time as the coastal populations, there were populations in the interior who were being just as innovative in their technologies and so on. So this is the paper from Nature, which shows the non-utilitarian collected objects at the sites here and in southern Africa. This is the GHN region here, and plotted. So calcite crystals recovered from area A of DBSR, specimen numbers of crystals and B, non-utilitarian collected objects in the Middle Stone Age archaeological record of southern Africa. So there are oyster eggshell based artifacts that are non-utilitarian, means they were not designed just for hunting, gathering, foraging, or whatever else activity that you can imagine as a utilitarian activity. Non-utilitarian objects tend to infer additional behavioral changes, maybe mental brain cognition changes, spiritual values, religious values, etc. So it's used as an indication of higher cognitive abilities, let's say. This paper shows here some key sites with fossil in orange and archaeological in blue evidence regarding Homo sapiens origin in Africa. So just to put timelines on fossil and archaeological evidences, typically we always focus here. Looking at the genetic diversity, the largest diversity is found in some places, which is used to infer that they have been around the longest to experience this genetic diversity over time, whereas those who got formed elsewhere by diaspora or some unknown other origin, which seems unlikely based on genetic clocks and so on, they are not as genetically diverse, and they are often carrying plenty of genetic signatures from the African population as well. So we talk about haplogroups elsewhere. So Homo sapiens in Herto 160 kiloyears, in Omo 195, archaeological evidence in terms of Capturin blades 500 kiloyears ago, 300 here, 51, 330 to 230, 260, 110, 100, 105, 500. So you can see there is some interior evidence here at 500, and there is some interior evidence here at 500. This is Homo sapiens with archaic features at 16 to 11 kiloyears, and this is 300 kiloyears up here, and this one is at 80 kiloyears. So it's a kind of a mix of various timelines. So you have to figure out the networks, the diaspora, the climate impacts, and so on. So in chapter 5 and 6 we talk a lot about the marine isotope stages and the climate changes and landscape changes that occurred during these periods, starting around almost 160, 170,000 years ago to into the Holocene. So the archaeological sites in and near about 100 kilometers of the Kalahari Basin, which is the light gray region here. Southwestern Africa with chronometric age estimates by marine isotope stage. We talk about this elsewhere. Basically, those are various geochemical tracer evidences which tell us about warming, cooling, drying, vegetation changes, and so on and so forth. Multiple time scales involved there. So within the Ice Age, that went from 135,000 years ago to about 11,000 years ago, where multiple glacial, interglacial, stadial, interstadial, Heinrich event kind of evidences that we will look at. Site details are given elsewhere. So here just remember that the interior evidence has been put together by this same author, and she basically leads this work and talks about behavioral innovations in the Kalahari Basin and their time depths, modeled after figure 13 in McBearty and Brooks, which we will look at elsewhere in terms of quotations and so on. But the idea is that the hypothesis that coastal populations used some refugia, sea level change, marine ecosystem changes, access to marine resources, and so on, to be more innovative, behaviorally more advanced, cognitively more advanced, or whatever. So this argument is that even interior, several hundred kilometers away from the coast, similar behaviors are seen around the same time. So here, going back to 500 kilo years, you can see the various technologies, Lavallois, blades, points, pigments, so colorings, long distance transport, oyster egg shell containers, non-utilitarian items. These are definitely behavioral aspects which are beyond just hunting, gathering, foraging. Social hierarchy, communication network, exchanges, tributary powers, power by consent, and so on and so forth. High velocity projectiles, freshwater shellfishing, freshwater fishing, barbed bone joints, beads, engraved images in much more recent times, over 100,000 years ago. So this kind of oyster eggshell evidence is also used to map relations with climates and so on. So this is the modern climate where the northern summer intertropical convergence zone moves with the sun over here, and in the boreal winter months or austral summer months follows the sun down to here. Different things happen over the monsoon region here, but nonetheless, over this study region here, it's been argued that there were regional connections as long ago as 50 to 33,000 years ago. So you can see the different haplogroups or sapiens communicating, exchanging, and some exchange here as well. And you can see the colored number changes here indicating population mixes. Loss of connection around 33 to 19 kilo years related to wetting and drying of the region here. So you can see now all the yellows or the oranges are separate from blues. You can look at the paper for details. Obviously, I'm not going to go into it. I just wanted to give you a sense that interpretation of evidences is always being debated, argued, recast based on new evidences to make up to formulate new hypotheses. Then more data have to be found to test the hypothesis, to evolve theories, and so on. This is regional isolation again, so loss of connection here, and then regional isolation. So that's from 19,000 years ago to 2,000 years ago, and regional connection is of course re-established from 2,000 years ago to the present. So this is just to indicate that the evidence is discussed in different papers by different authors. We will look more at more of these examples along the way in chapter 3, rest of this chapter and elsewhere as well. But newer evidences keep emerging as new archaeological sites or fossil evidences are found. So this story will keep evolving, but the basic robust theory is not likely to change in terms of the African origin, out of Africa, climate impacts, environmental determinism versus social behavioral aspects in the changes we see, genetic and epigenetic changes, and so on and so forth. Okay, just leave it there, but that there were sapiens evolving more intelligent, non-utilitarian technologies and artifacts away from the coast as well, especially in the Kalahari region. But that's where this group focuses. I'm sure there are other evidences that will emerge later as well. Okay.